Heraclitus River Paradox. Before we begin, imagine this. A quiet river at night, drifting gently under a sky filled with scattered starlight. The water looks still, but it's never the same water twice. This is the heart of Heraclitus, River Paradox, a soft, calming idea that can shift the way your mind feels tonight, almost without you noticing. You picture yourself at the riverbank, where the air carries a cool, steady breath, and the world feels like it's loosening around you. The water drifts by without urgency, catching small fragments of starlight and breaking them gently whenever the current shifts. Nothing asks for effort here. You simply stand beside the slow-moving river, breathing with it, noticing how everything inside you softens when you stop trying to hold on. When you lower your hand toward the water, a calm coolness greets your fingertips, light, refreshing, passing through with no intention of staying. You lift your hand, then touch the surface again, and the feeling is already different. The river has moved on, replaced by something new, something freshly arrived from upstream. It looks the same, but it is always becoming something else beneath the surface, changing in ways you can sense only through these quiet repetitions. Heraclitus believed the world moves in this same steady way, not through sudden surprises, but through small, continuous shifts shaping each moment. Even now, the feelings drifting through you, the thoughts settling in your mind, the slow easing of your breath, they're all part of this quiet movement. Nothing stays exactly as it was, and yet everything feels familiar enough to rest inside. As you imagine the river again, you notice how comforting this idea becomes. You don't have to force anything to stay the same. You don't have to hold tightly to the version of yourself you were yesterday or even earlier today. Like the water moving past your hand, you're allowed to shift in small, natural ways. The world changes with you, not against you. The river doesn't rush. It simply moves gently, without asking for anything more than a moment of acknowledgement. You stand there a little longer, breathing with the same ease as the water's flow. The river keeps going, quiet and steady, carrying each second forward. And you realize that you can do the same, letting this moment pass, letting the next one arrive, letting yourself settle into the simple rhythm of things you don't need to control. As you drift toward sleep tonight, consider this. You are both the river that keeps moving and the hand that rests against its surface, always changing, always familiar. And as this thought settles softly inside you, something else begins to stir, a question about what truly makes anything separate at all. A gentle mystery that leads you toward the next paradox, waiting quietly just ahead. Anaxagoras paradox of everything in everything. You imagine holding a glass of water, cool and clear, in your hand. At first glance, it seems simple, just water, nothing more. But as you look closer, letting your mind drift into the details, you begin to sense something deeper. Anaxagoras, an ancient thinker, believed that within every substance, no matter how pure it appears, there exists a portion of everything else. In this water, he would say, there are traces of earth, echoes of fire, fragments of bone and mind. Nothing is ever truly separate. Everything holds a piece of the whole. This is Anaxagoras' paradox of everything in everything. The idea that all things are woven together in ways too subtle to see but impossible to deny. The boundaries we draw between objects, between elements, between ourselves and the world, they're softer than we think. When you drink that water, you're taking in more than liquid. You're receiving something that has traveled through rivers and clouds, through soil and roots, through countless forms before arriving in your hand. As you rest here, let that thought settle gently. Your body, your breath, your thoughts, they're all made from pieces of the world around you. The air you breathe was once inside someone else. The atoms in your hand were once part of distant stars. Nothing about you exists in isolation. You are a meeting place for everything that has come before, blended and swirled into this particular moment of being. There's something deeply comforting in this. You don't have to carry everything alone because you never were alone. You're already part of something vast and interconnected, held within a web of existence that supports you without effort. The separation you sometimes feel, between you and others, between you and peace, between you and rest, it's thinner than it seems. You're already woven into the fabric of everything. Let your mind soften now, the way water blends with itself. Let your sense of where you end and the world begins blur just a little. There's no need to hold yourself so tightly defined. You can dissolve just slightly into the peaceful unity that was always there. Let this thought rest lightly on your mind. You are already woven into everything, and everything is quietly woven into you. As that soft truth dissolves the edges of separation, another curiosity rises, something about truth and falseness looping around each other like shadows. A quiet riddle waits for you, just a breath away. Epimenides Paradox extended. In the quiet of your mind, you hear a voice, soft, distant, as though carried from across centuries. It whispers, "All Cretans are liars." The words drift through the air like smoke, curling into a shape you can almost hold. But then something shifts. You remember the speaker himself was a Cretan. If all Cretans are liars, then he must be lying. But if he's lying about all Cretans being liars, then perhaps they tell the truth. And if they tell the truth, then his statement was true. But if it was true, then he's a liar again. Round and round it goes, circling endlessly, never quite settling. This is Epimenides' Paradox, a riddle that loops back on itself, refusing to find solid ground. It's a puzzle where truth and falsehood chase each other in an endless spiral, neither one able to catch the other. The ancient Greeks loved these kinds of games, questions that reveal how slippery language can be, how logic sometimes ties itself into knots. But here's what's interesting. The more you try to solve it, the more tangled it becomes. And the more you relax into it, the less it matters. You realize that not every riddle needs an answer. Not every loop needs to be broken. Some puzzles are simply meant to be held gently, acknowledged, and then set aside. As you rest here, notice how your mind might want to keep circling the question, trying to find the trick, the solution, the way out. But tonight, you don't need to solve anything. You can let this paradox become background music, a soft, looping melody that plays quietly while you drift. It doesn't demand your attention. It simply exists, spinning in its own gentle rhythm, and you can listen without needing to understand. There's something freeing in this. So much of life asks you to figure things out, to find answers, to make sense of confusion. But sleep doesn't ask for that. Sleep invites you to let go of the need for resolution, to rest inside uncertainty, to breathe while questions remain unanswered. Hold this gentle awareness. Not every loop needs to be broken. Some simply keep you company as you drift. And as this soft acceptance settles in your thoughts, another feeling emerges, a wondering about change so subtle you cannot see where it begins. The next paradox unfolds quietly ahead of you. Chrysippus' growing argument. You imagine holding an acorn in your palm, small, smooth, contained. It feels complete in its smallness, a perfect seed resting in your hand. But you know what it will become. Given time, given soil and rain and sunlight, this acorn will transform into something vast, a towering oak with roots that run deep and branches that reach toward the sky. But here's the question Chrysippus asked. When does the acorn stop being a seed and become a tree? Is there a single moment when the transformation happens? When the first root breaks through the shell? When the first green shoot appears above the soil? When it reaches a certain height? When it grows its first full branch? This is Chrysippus' growing argument, a puzzle about the nature of change and transformation. The more you think about it, the harder it becomes to find a clear line. The acorn becomes a sapling so gradually that you can't point to a specific moment and say, "There, that's when it changed." The process is continuous, seamless, so gentle that it resists definition. As you lie here, you realize your body knows this kind of transformation intimately. Right now, you're shifting from wakefulness to sleep, but there's no single moment when it happens. Your thoughts are becoming slower, your breath deeper, your awareness softer. The change is happening, but it's so gradual that you can't catch it in the act. One moment you're awake, and then, without ever noticing the exact transition, you'll be asleep. There's wisdom in this kind of change, the kind that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't demand attention, that simply unfolds in its own time. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to identify the exact moment when rest arrives. You simply allow the process to continue, the way the acorn allows itself to become a tree. Let this truth settle like roots beneath you. Transformation doesn't need to announce itself. It only needs room to unfold. And as that calm realization eases through you, a new question stirs, something about unity and multiplicity shimmering in the same breath. The next paradox begins to form in the distance. The paradox of the one and the many. You gaze up at the night sky, and for a moment all you see is darkness, one vast expanse stretching endlessly above you. But then your eyes adjust and the darkness breaks apart into countless points of light. Stars, thousands of them, maybe millions, each one distinct, each one burning with its own distant fire. The sky is one thing. The sky is many things. Both truths exist at once, and neither cancels the other out. This is the paradox of the one and the many, an ancient question that philosophers have turned over for centuries. Where does unity end and individuality begin? Is the night sky a single tapestry, or is it a collection of separate stars? Is a forest one living organism, or thousands of individual trees? Are you one continuous self, or a collection of changing thoughts, feelings, memories, and sensations? The paradox reveals that the answer isn't either-or, it's both. The world exists simultaneously as unity and multiplicity, as wholeness and fragments, as oneness and manyness. Your body is one body, but it's also made of trillions of cells. Your mind is one awareness, but it contains countless thoughts. You are yourself, and you are also part of something much larger, your family, your community, the earth, the universe. As you lie here, you can feel both truths at once. You are distinctly you with your own thoughts, your own breath, your own experience of this moment. And yet, you're also dissolving slightly into the night, into the bed beneath you, into the quiet hum of the world around you. Your boundaries are softening. Where you end and everything else begins becomes less clear, less important. There's peace in this blurring. You don't have to hold yourself so separate, so defined, so distinct from everything else. You can be yourself and part of the whole at the same time. The stars don't struggle with this. They shine individually while belonging to the sky. You can rest the same way. Breathe softly into this. You are both a single point of light and an entire constellation at once. And as that duality settles gently around you, another subtle thought approaches, something about change that may not be change at all. The next paradox steps quietly into view. Parmenides' Paradox of Change. You watch sunlight shift across ancient marble, the way afternoon fades into evening. Light moves across the stone, creating new shadows, new shapes, new textures with each passing moment. Everything seems to be changing, the light, the shadows, the feeling in the air. But Parmenides, one of the earliest Greek philosophers, asked a radical question. Can there really be any true change at all? He argued that change is an illusion, that what truly exists must be eternal, unchanging, complete. If something changes, he reasoned, it must become something it wasn't before. But how can something that doesn't exist suddenly come into existence? And how can something that exists suddenly cease to be? This is Parmenides' Paradox of Change. It suggests that beneath all the apparent movement and transformation, there is something unchanging, something eternal that remains constant. The marble doesn't truly change. It simply reveals different aspects of itself as the light moves across it. You don't truly change. You simply experience yourself differently as time moves through you. As you rest here, let this question roll through you gently. Is the you that existed yesterday the same you that exists now? The body has changed, thoughts have come and gone, feelings have shifted. And yet, something about you feels continuous, unchanged, always present beneath the surface transformations. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps you are always changing and never changing at the same time. Perhaps the world is constantly becoming new while remaining exactly what it has always been. The paradox doesn't need resolution. It simply invites you to hold both possibilities gently, without choosing one or rejecting the other. There's something deeply restful in this. You don't have to track every change, don't have to worry about becoming someone different, don't have to cling to staying the same. You can simply be, whatever that means in this particular moment, and trust that something essential about you remains, even as everything else flows and shifts. Rest in this calm truth. You are both the river and the stone, forever shifting, forever the same. And as this paradox softens into stillness, another idea begins to glow, something about dividing and dividing, searching for the smallest piece. The next paradox unfolds softly before you. Democritus Paradox of the Cut. You picture a golden thread catching the light as it stretches before you. It's smooth, continuous, and unbroken. But now imagine taking scissors and cutting it in half. You have two pieces. Take one piece and cut it in half again. Now you have 4 pieces. Cut again. 8 pieces again. 16. Democritus asked, does this division ever end? Can you keep cutting forever, making smaller and smaller pieces, infinitely? Or do you eventually reach something so small it cannot be divided any further, some fundamental particle, some basic building block of reality? This is Democritus' Paradox of the Cut. He believed in atoms, tiny, indivisible pieces that everything is made from. But the paradox asks, how can anything truly be indivisible? If something exists, if it has any size at all, shouldn't it be possible, at least in theory, to cut it in half? The question spirals inward, smaller and smaller, like the thread being cut again and again. It asks whether reality has a bottom, a foundation, or whether it divides endlessly into smaller and smaller pieces without ever reaching a final answer. As you lie here, you can feel your mind wanting to follow this question down into smaller and smaller spaces. But instead of following it, you can do something different. You can narrow your focus to a single peaceful point, not the smallest possible point, but simply a point that feels comfortable, that feels like rest. A single breath, a single moment, a single sensation of the pillow beneath your head. You don't need to divide that moment into smaller pieces. You don't need to analyze it or understand it or break it apart. You can simply let it exist, whole and complete, at the center of your awareness. Everything else can fall away. Let this simplicity comfort you. Not everything needs to be broken down. Some things are meant to be experienced whole. As the golden thread settles into stillness, a new motion begins to rise, a question about how we ever arrive anywhere at all. The next paradox waits gently on the horizon. The paradox of mobility. You imagine yourself walking through a dream, moving from one scene to another. But here's a strange question. To get from where you are to where you're going, don't you first have to travel halfway there? And before you can reach the halfway point, don't you first have to reach the quarter point? And before that, the 8th, and before that, the 16th. This is the paradox of mobility, sometimes called Zeno's paradox. It suggests that every journey contains infinite halfway steps, endless divisions that must be crossed before you can arrive anywhere at all. Logically, it seems impossible to ever complete a journey, because you'd have to complete an infinite number of steps first. And yet you move, you arrive, you step from dream to dream without counting the infinite divisions in between. Somehow, motion happens despite the logical impossibility. The paradox reveals a gap between how we think about movement and how movement actually occurs, a mystery that logic cannot fully explain. As you rest here, you don't need to understand how movement works. You don't need to count the steps between waking and sleeping. You simply move through them, naturally, without effort, the way you've always moved through space and time. Your mind doesn't need to calculate the infinite halfway points. Your body knows how to arrive without measuring the journey. There's freedom in abandoning the counting, in releasing the need to understand every step. You can simply be here, moving gently from one moment to the next, trusting that arrival will come without your conscious direction. Allow this ease to fill you. You don't have to measure the journey, you simply arrive. As that effortless truth carries you forward, another small mystery emerges, something about answers hidden inside simple shapes and shells. The next paradox breathes softly ahead. Eubulides' Riddle Paradox. In the darkness of your mind, an ancient riddle appears. My father is a king, my mother a queen, but I am no prince. The words float there, asking to be solved. You turn them over gently, looking for the answer. What could be born to royalty but not be royal itself? The answer, when it comes, is simple and strange. An egg, pure possibility contained in a shell. Not yet what it will become, but holding everything it needs to transform. It exists in the space between, not quite the bird, not quite nothing, suspended in potential. This is Eubulides' Riddle Paradox, one of many puzzles the ancient Greeks used to explore the edges of logic and language. These riddles weren't meant to frustrate. They were meant to show how thinking can lead to places where answers and questions blur together, where logic becomes poetry, where the mind softens into wonder rather than certainty. As you rest here, you realize you're in a similar space, not quite awake, not quite asleep, suspended in the gentle territory between. Like the egg, you hold potential for transformation. You don't need to force it or rush it. You simply need to rest here in this in-between place and trust that change will come in its own time. The riddle doesn't need to be solved. It just needs to be held gently, the way you might hold an egg, carefully, with respect for its fragility and its promise. Your mind can do the same with thoughts tonight. You don't have to crack them open or figure them out. You can simply let them rest, suspended in the gentle space where logic and dreams meet. Let this gentle space hold you. You don't have to become anything. You can simply rest in possibility. As that calm understanding settles like a shell around you, another curiosity appears. Something about circles, motion, and harmony. The next paradox turns quietly into place. Aristotle's Wheel Paradox. You imagine two circles, one inside the other, connected at the center like wheels on an axle. As they turn together, something strange happens. The outer wheel travels a greater distance because its circumference is larger. The inner wheel, being smaller, covers less ground. And yet, they complete their rotation at exactly the same time, arriving back at their starting point together. How can this be? How can two things move different distances but finish simultaneously? This is Aristotle's Wheel Paradox, a puzzle about motion, distance, and the nature of rotation. It reveals something surprising, that movement isn't always about the distance traveled. Sometimes it's about the relationship between things, about how they move together even when they seem to be doing different work. As you lie here, your mind might want to circle around this question, trying to understand how it's possible. But instead of searching for the answer, you can simply let your thoughts circle the paradox gently, like the wheels themselves. Slowly, steadily, without urgency. There's something soothing about circular motion, the way it returns to where it started, the way it creates rhythm without needing to go anywhere. Your breath does this too. It circles in and out, always returning, always completing its rotation without effort. You don't have to understand how it works, you just let it happen. The paradox reminds you that not everything needs to make perfect logical sense. Some things simply work, simply continue, simply turn in their own gentle rhythm. You can trust that rhythm tonight, the way the wheels trust their connection to each other. Breathe into this steady rhythm. Not everything needs to make sense for you to move peacefully through it. As the wheels slow and soften, another thought awakens, something about ideals, forms, and endless reflections. The next paradox approaches with quiet grace. Plato's third man argument. You think about the idea of man, not any specific person, but the perfect ideal of what a human being is. Plato believed that this ideal form exists somewhere beyond the physical world, and that every actual person is just an imperfect copy of it. You relate to this form, participating in its essence in order to be human. But here's where the paradox begins. If you and the ideal form are both real things and you relate to each other, doesn't there need to be a third thing, another form, that explains that relationship? a form of relationship between man and the form of man. And if that exists, doesn't there need to be a fourth form to explain how the third form relates to the second, and a fifth and a sixth, stretching endlessly into infinity? This is Plato's third-man argument, a paradox that suggests his theory of forms might create an infinite regress, an endless chain of forms, each one requiring another to explain it, never reaching a final foundation. The paradox spirals upward and outward, forms upon forms upon forms, each one trying to capture the essence of what connects the previous two. It's dizzying if you try to follow it, like climbing a staircase that never ends. But as you rest here, you can simply let that infinite chain exist without needing to climb it. Let it unwind gently in your thoughts, like a thread that spools out endlessly but never tangles. You don't have to reach the end. You don't have to find the ultimate form. You can simply acknowledge the mystery that some things, when you look closely, reveal endless layers, endless depths, endless connections. There's something comforting in accepting infinity this way. It means you don't have to understand everything. You don't have to reach the end of the chain. You can rest here, in this particular moment, in this particular body, without needing to trace yourself back to some ultimate source. Rest in this acceptance. Infinity doesn't need to be climbed, it only needs to be acknowledged. And as the infinite chain fades into silence, another timeless question rises, something about goodness, meaning, and divine affection. The next paradox unfolds gently. Plato's Euthyphro dilemma. A question appears in your mind, simple but profound. Is something good because the gods love it, or do the gods love it because it is good? This is Plato's Euthyphro dilemma, a puzzle about the nature of morality and goodness. If things are good simply because the gods declare them so, then goodness seems arbitrary, it could change on a whim. But if the gods love things because those things are already good, then goodness exists independently of the gods, which raises the question, what makes something good in the first place? The dilemma circles back on itself, neither option quite satisfying, neither quite complete. It's a question that has followed humanity for thousands of years, appearing in different forms. Is right and wrong determined by authority, or does it exist beyond authority? Do we create values or discover them? As you rest here, these questions don't need to be answered. They can simply exist like quiet companions sitting beside you in the darkness. Questions of right and wrong, good and bad, purpose and meaning, they're part of being human. But tonight, they don't need to be solved. They can become something softer, a warm blanket of wonder covering you gently as you drift. Sometimes the deepest comfort comes not from having answers, but from accepting that questions can coexist with peace. You can wonder about goodness without knowing its source. You can rest inside uncertainty about ultimate truths. The not knowing doesn't have to feel like absence, it can feel like spaciousness. Settle into this softness. You don't need to solve the mystery of goodness to feel it. As that warmth gathers around you, another image begins to form, a figure resting beneath eternal moonlight, suspended in perfect stillness. The next paradox awaits quietly. The Sleep of Endymion. You imagine a figure lying beneath the moon, Endymion, a shepherd granted eternal sleep by the gods. He rests in a cave, never aging, never waking, suspended in perfect stillness. The moon visits him each night, watching over his unchanging face. Time passes around him, but he remains untouched by it, preserved in the timeless embrace of sleep. Is this a blessing or a prison? To sleep forever, never troubled by pain or worry or loss, but also never experiencing joy or connection or growth. To be perfectly still while the world moves on. To be safe from all harm but also removed from all life. The myth of Endymion asks you to consider the nature of peace itself. Is perfect peace the absence of all experience, or is it something that exists within experience? Is rest an escape from life, or a necessary part of it? As you lie here, you're not seeking Endymion's eternal sleep. You're seeking tonight's sleep, temporary, restorative, necessary. The sleep that allows you to return to waking life refreshed. The sleep that doesn't remove you from the world but prepares you to meet it again tomorrow. There's wisdom in this kind of rest. It's not about escaping permanently or shutting down completely. It's about pausing, renewing, allowing your body and mind to restore themselves. It's about experiencing the soft embrace of timeless night while knowing that morning will come, that life will continue, that you will wake. You can enjoy this suspension without fearing it. You can rest in the timeless quality of sleep, where hours feel like moments, where the usual rules of time seem to soften, while trusting that you'll return when you're ready. Let this comfort surround you. Sleep is not an escape from life, it's the gift that restores it. As moonlight fades into deeper night, another riddle stirs, something about fate, prophecy, and choices that fold back on themselves. The next paradox whispers from the shadows. Oracle's Paradox. A voice echoes from an ancient temple. You will refute this prophecy. The words hang in the air, challenging you. Can you refute it? If you do, then the prophecy was true. You did refute it just as predicted. But if the prophecy is true, then you didn't really refute it at all. And if you don't refute it, then the prophecy was false, which means you could have refuted it. Round and round it goes. This is the Oracle's Paradox, a puzzle about fate, free will, and the nature of prediction. It asks whether you have genuine choice, or whether your actions are already woven into the fabric of what must happen. Can you defy prophecy, or does even your defiance become part of its fulfillment? The ancient Greeks loved these kinds of questions, especially when they visited oracles seeking guidance about their futures. The prophecies they received were often ambiguous, capable of being true no matter what happened. It was a way of acknowledging that the future is both determined and open, both fixed and fluid. As you rest here, you can release these questions into the night air. Whatever worries you carried about tomorrow, whatever plans or fears or hopes, they can drift away for now. You don't need to know what will happen. You don't need to control every outcome. You can whisper your wishes to the midnight air and then let them go, trusting that some things will unfold in their own way, in their own time. Fate and choice aren't opposites. They're partners in a dance you can't fully see. But you don't need to see the whole pattern tonight. You just need to rest within it, held by something larger than your understanding. Relax into this release. You don't have to know the future to rest in the present. And as the prophecy dissolves into silence, another guardian rises, a creature of riddles, thresholds, and transformation. The next paradox waits just beyond her gaze. Paradox of the Sphinx's Riddle. You stand before the Sphinx, that ancient creature with the body of a lion and the face of a human. She poses her famous riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? The stakes are high. Answer incorrectly and face destruction. Answer correctly and pass safely. The answer, of course, is a human being, crawling as an infant, walking upright as an adult, and using a cane in old age. But the paradox lies deeper than the answer. It's about the relationship between fear and logic, danger and thinking. When your life depends on solving a puzzle, can you think clearly? Does fear sharpen your mind or cloud it? The Sphinx represents all the high-stakes moments in life where you must think under pressure, where getting it right seems desperately important, where failure feels catastrophic. But here's what's interesting. The riddle itself is actually quite simple once you relax into it. The difficulty comes not from the complexity of the question, but from the fear surrounding it. As you rest here tonight, you can acknowledge a profound truth. There are no sphinxes waiting for you in sleep. No riddles with dangerous consequences. No tests you must pass. Tonight there are only gentle puzzles and the promise of dreams. The pressure is gone. The stakes have dissolved. You can let your mind relax completely, releasing any sense that you need to perform, to prove something, to get anything right. Sleep asks nothing of you except your presence. It doesn't test you. It simply receives you. Feel the ease in this truth. You don't have to solve anything to be safe here. As the Sphinx steps aside, another whisper arrives, something playful, small, and bright, hidden in ordinary things. The next paradox flickers softly ahead. Riddles of the Greek Anthology. A voice whispers another ancient riddle. I am born of water but die if I drink it. You turn the words over gently in your mind. What could be created by water but destroyed by it? The answer appears softly. A candle, born from wax that was once shaped by water's coolness, but extinguished immediately if water touches the flame. The Greek Anthology was full of these small, luminous riddles, not grand philosophical puzzles, but playful observations about ordinary things made strange through careful attention. They invite you to see the world differently, to notice the beautiful contradictions hidden in everyday objects. A candle is a perfect image for this moment. It burns steadily, providing light, consuming itself slowly in service of illumination. And then, when its purpose is complete, it can be gently extinguished. No drama, no struggle, just a quiet return to darkness. Your thoughts tonight can be like candle flames, bright when needed, but allowed to flicker down when their work is done. You don't have to keep every thought burning brightly. You can let them dim, let them fade, let them return to the darkness from which they came. There's something beautiful about this kind of fading. It's not about losing something precious, it's about completing a cycle. The candle gave its light and now it rests. Your day gave its efforts and now you rest. Nothing is lost. The candle can be lit again tomorrow. Your mind can engage again tomorrow. But right now, in this moment, the flame can gently fade. Let the fading flame guide you. Letting your thoughts dim is not loss, it's completion. As the candlelight softens into darkness, another idea begins to take shape, something about reversals, shifting meanings, and how context changes everything. The next paradox turns gently toward you. Philo's paradox of reversals. You imagine a scene. A person rushes into a burning building and pulls someone to safety. A hero, clearly. But now imagine the same scene with one detail changed. The rescuer is also the one who started the fire. Same action, different context. Is rescue still heroic when the rescuer created the danger? This is Philo's paradox of reversals, a puzzle about how context transforms meaning. The same action can be noble or villainous depending on what came before. Truth isn't always fixed. It shifts with perspective, with history, with the frame you place around it. The paradox reveals something important about judgment and understanding. What looks one way from the outside might look completely different from the inside. What seems simple might be complex. What appears wrong might have reasons you don't see. The world rarely offers clean, simple moral clarity. As you rest here, you can release the need to judge every situation, to have firm opinions about everything, to know definitively what's right and wrong. You can accept that truth is sometimes contextual, sometimes shifting, sometimes more complicated than it first appears. This doesn't mean nothing matters or that all perspectives are equal. It just means you can hold your judgments more lightly, with more humility, with more openness to the possibility that you don't see the whole picture. In dreams, this kind of reversal happens naturally. What begins as one thing transforms into another. A friend becomes a stranger. A room becomes a forest. Nothing stays fixed, and somehow that feels perfectly natural. You can let your waking mind learn from this, accepting that shifting truths are part of how reality works. Settle into this understanding. When truth shifts, you don't have to hold on tighter, you can shift with it. And as the scene reshapes itself, another presence appears, a gentle reflection on friendship, connection, and choosing one another. The next paradox arrives quietly. Paradox of friendship, Aristotle. You think about your closest friend, the person who wishes only the best for you. True friendship, Aristotle said, means wanting good things for your friend, wanting them to be happy, healthy, fulfilled, complete. But here's the paradox. If the very best thing for someone is to be completely self-sufficient, to need nothing and no one, then a true friend would wish for their friend to have no need of friendship at all. But if that wish came true, the friendship itself would no longer be necessary. So how can genuine care and connection persist? If you truly love someone, should you wish for them to not need you? And if they no longer need you, what holds the friendship together? The paradox reveals something beautiful and mysterious about human connection. Perhaps the deepest bonds aren't based on need at all. Perhaps true friendship exists not because we require something from each other, but because we choose each other, again and again, even when we could stand alone. As you rest here, you can feel the quiet presence of the people who care about you. They're not holding you up because you would fall without them. They're simply choosing to be present, choosing connection, choosing love, not out of necessity, but out of something deeper and more mysterious. You don't have to understand why connection matters to receive it. You don't have to explain why you need others to be held by them. The bonds between people exist in a territory beyond logic, beyond transaction, beyond simple cause and effect. They just are mysterious, essential, unexplainable. Tonight, you can rest inside that mystery. You can feel held by care that doesn't ask you to justify it. You can receive support that doesn't require you to be insufficient. You can be both complete in yourself and connected to others, another paradox that doesn't need resolution. Hold this warmth close. You are supported by bonds that exist beyond need. As that feeling embraces you, another subtle question emerges, something about perception, perspective, and the many ways the world can appear. The next paradox opens softly. Protagoras' Paradox of Perception. You close your eyes and explore the world in darkness. Sound becomes sharper, touch becomes more detailed, the bed beneath you feels more present. But here's what Protagoras noticed. Every person experiences reality differently. What feels warm to you might feel cool to someone else. What sounds loud to you might sound quiet to another. If man is the measure of all things, as Protagoras claimed, then whose measure is true when perceptions diverge? This is Protagoras' paradox of perception. It suggests that reality might not be a fixed, objective thing that exists the same way for everyone. Instead, reality might be filtered through individual experience, shaped by each person's unique perspective. Your truth is your truth. Their truth is theirs. And there's no neutral vantage point from which to judge whose perception is correct. The paradox can feel unsettling at first. If everyone's experience is different, how can we share a common world? But as you rest here, you can find something comforting in this idea. It means you don't have to experience things the way others do. You don't have to feel what they feel or see what they see. Your particular way of being in the world is valid, even if it differs from everyone else's. Subjectivity isn't a weakness. It's simply how consciousness works. You can only ever experience reality from exactly where you are, through exactly who you are. And that's enough. That's complete. You don't need to escape your perspective or apologize for it. Tonight, your particular experience of rest is the only one that matters. However your body feels, however your mind settles, however sleep approaches you, that's the right way for it to happen. There's no objective standard you need to meet. There's only your experience, unfolding in its own way. Rest in this permission. Your experience doesn't have to match anyone else's to be true. As that truth settles like a blanket over your thoughts, another whisper surfaces, something about knowing, unknowing, and the wisdom inside not knowing at all. The next paradox begins to glow. The paradox of sophisticated ignorance, Socrates. A voice speaks from ancient Athens. I know that I know nothing. These are Socrates' most famous words, but they contain a strange loop. If he knows that he knows nothing, doesn't that mean he knows at least one thing? And if he knows one thing, then he doesn't truly know nothing. The statement circles back on itself, true and false at once. This is the paradox of sophisticated ignorance, the idea that wisdom might include an awareness of its own limits. Socrates believed the wisest people are those who understand how little they actually know. Most people walk through life assuming they understand things they've never questioned. Socrates questioned everything, and in doing so, discovered how vast the territory of mystery truly is. There's something deeply humble and deeply freeing in this approach. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to pretend certainty when you feel doubt. You can hold your knowledge lightly, with curiosity rather than attachment, with openness rather than defensiveness. As you rest here, notice how much lighter your mind feels when you release the pressure to know things, to have opinions, to understand everything. You can simply rest in not knowing, in gentle uncertainty, in the spaciousness that opens when you stop trying to have all the answers. Sleep itself is a form of sophisticated ignorance. When you sleep, you surrender conscious control. You don't know exactly when you'll fall asleep or what you'll dream. You don't direct the process, you simply allow it. And in that allowing, in that release of knowing and controlling, rest becomes possible. Let this openness soothe you. Wisdom includes the freedom to not know. As your mind loosens into that spaciousness, another thought approaches, something about remembering what seems forgotten and searching for what you already carry. The next paradox drifts near. Plato's paradox of recollection. You try to remember something you've forgotten, a name, a place, a moment from your past, and here's what's strange. You know you've forgotten it. You can sense the shape of the missing memory, feel the space where it should be. But if you've completely forgotten something, how do you know it's missing? How can you search for something when you don't know what you're looking for? This is Plato's paradox of recollection. Plato believed that all learning is actually remembering, that your soul knew everything before you were born, and life is simply the process of recalling what you already knew. When you learn something new, you're not acquiring foreign information. You're recognizing truth you'd temporarily forgotten. The paradox asks, how can you seek knowledge unless you already in some way possess it? How can you recognize the answer unless you already knew it was the answer? As you rest here, you can imagine your mind as a vast library filled with ancient knowledge, most of it hidden in shadows. You don't need to search through it tonight. You don't need to remember everything or understand everything. The knowledge is there, waiting patiently, and it will surface when needed. Perhaps sleep itself is a form of remembering, reconnecting with something essential you'd forgotten during the busyness of the day. Perhaps rest is returning to a deeper knowing, a wisdom that exists beneath all your thoughts and worries and efforts. You can trust that what you need to know will come to you. You can wander the ancient corridors of your own mind without urgency, noticing what appears and letting the rest remain peacefully in shadow. Sink gently into this. You already contain everything you need. Rest allows it to return. As the library doors close softly behind you, another wonder takes shape, something about riddles that are solved simply by living inside them. The next paradox settles at your side. Paradox of the riddle's solution. An ancient question appears. If a riddle has no answer, is it still a riddle? Or does it become something else? A mystery, a meditation, a question meant to be lived with rather than solved. This is the paradox of the riddle's solution. Some riddles are designed to have clever answers that make you smile when you discover them. But other riddles exist for a different purpose, not to be solved, but to open you, to change how you think, to make you comfortable with uncertainty. The greatest questions in life often work this way. What is the meaning of existence? What happens after death? What is consciousness? These aren't riddles with hidden answers waiting to be discovered. They're invitations into mystery, doorways into wonder, questions that transform you through the asking rather than through the answering. As you rest here, you can take comfort in quiet uncertainty. Not every question you carry needs to be answered tonight. Not every puzzle needs to be solved. Some things are simply here to keep you company, to give your mind something to play with gently, to remind you that mystery is not a problem to be fixed, but a space to be inhabited. Sleep lives in this same territory. You can't force it or solve it or figure it out. You can only invite it, welcome it, become comfortable with the uncertainty of when and how it will arrive. The not knowing becomes part of the peace. Embrace this peace. Some questions are answered not by solving them but by resting within them. And as the riddle quiets, another image appears, tiles, shapes, and fragments easing themselves into unity. The next paradox begins to assemble. The Stomachion Puzzle. You visualize colored tiles scattered before you, triangles, squares, irregular shapes in different sizes. Your task is to arrange them into a perfect square, each piece fitting exactly with no gaps, no overlaps. This is the Stomachion, an ancient Greek puzzle, possibly invented by Archimedes himself. But here's what's interesting. There are multiple solutions. Depending on how you count, there might be dozens of ways to solve it, maybe more. Each arrangement different, each one complete, each one correct. The puzzle doesn't have a single answer. It has abundance, multiplicity, many paths to wholeness. As you imagine these tiles, you can picture them slowly arranging themselves, not through force or struggle, but through gentle settling. Each piece finding its place naturally, drawn to where it belongs. Fragments of your day, moments, conversations, feelings, thoughts, can settle the same way now. You don't need to consciously arrange everything. You don't need to force the pieces to fit. You can simply allow them to find their natural positions, trusting that they'll create a complete picture even if you're not directing the process. There are many ways for the pieces to come together. Any solution that feels peaceful is the right one. The day is ending, and all its fragments are settling into unity. Not the only possible unity, but a unity that's perfect for right now. Tomorrow the pieces might arrange differently. Tonight, they form exactly the pattern you need for rest. Let this truth comfort you. There are countless ways to become whole. You only need one for tonight. As the pieces rest into place, another presence rises, something joyful, light, and wise in its own playful way. The next paradox smiles softly ahead. Aristophanes' Paradox of Comedy. You remember something funny from earlier, a moment that made you smile, a joke that landed perfectly, a bit of absurdity that broke through seriousness. Aristophanes, the great comic playwright of ancient Greece, understood something profound. Sometimes the deepest truths hide inside laughter. Comedy isn't frivolous. It's a way of seeing clearly, of puncturing pretension, of revealing what serious discourse often misses. This is Aristophanes' Paradox of Comedy, that wisdom and humor aren't opposites but partners. The things that make you laugh often carry more truth than the things that make you nod seriously. A good joke can reveal hypocrisy, expose absurdity, illuminate reality more clearly than a philosophical treatise. As you rest here, you can smile softly in the darkness. You can remember that life doesn't always have to be serious, that understanding doesn't always have to feel heavy, that wisdom can arrive wearing a silly hat and making faces. The paradoxes you've wandered through tonight, they're serious philosophical puzzles, yes, but they're also playful. They're jokes that reality plays on logic. They're the universe's way of reminding you not to take your understanding too seriously, because reality is always more surprising, more flexible, more delightfully strange than your categories can capture. You can carry this lightness into sleep. Rest doesn't have to be solemn. Peace doesn't have to be serious. You can drift away with a slight smile, grateful for a universe strange enough to make you think and light enough to make you laugh. Carry this gentle smile with you. Joy and depth aren't opposites. They're the same truth seen differently. As that lightness warms your chest, another question approaches. Something about trust, doubt, and messages arriving in uncertain ways. The final paradox waits quietly. The paradox of the untrustworthy messenger. You imagine receiving news from a messenger you don't fully trust. Sometimes they bring good information, sometimes bad, sometimes true, sometimes false. You never know which it will be. Do you trust them? Do you doubt them? How do you navigate a world where the reliability of information is uncertain? This is the paradox of the untrustworthy messenger, a puzzle about trust, uncertainty, and how we make decisions without complete information. In ancient times, Messengers could be bribed, confused, or simply mistaken. The information they carried was always filtered through fallible human channels. The paradox reflects a deeper truth about living with uncertainty. You can't always verify everything. You can't always know what's true. Sometimes you have to make choices, take action, move forward without perfect information. And somehow, life continues. Somehow, you navigate. As you rest here, you can release the need to verify everything, to fact-check every thought, to know for certain whether tomorrow will bring good news or challenges. You can't know, and that's okay. You've navigated uncertainty before. You'll navigate it again. But right now, in this moment, you don't have to navigate anything. You can forget tomorrow's messages. You can ignore the unreliable messengers of anxiety that try to deliver predictions about the future. You can surrender to the only certainty you need right now, the comfort of your pillow, the warmth of your blanket, the steady rhythm of your breath. The thought to keep with you is this: you don't need perfect information to rest perfectly. And as that truth silences all the unreliable voices, the messengers fade into the distance, their messages undelivered and unneeded, leaving you in complete, quiet peace. As we reach the end of our journey through these beautiful contradictions, take a moment to notice how your mind feels, perhaps softer now, a little more spacious, and more comfortable with uncertainty than when we began. Paradoxes were never meant to frustrate us or convince us that thinking is futile. They exist to gently expand us, to loosen the boundaries of what we assumed reality had to be. They remind us that truth is rarely simple, that perspective changes everything, and that the universe is far more mysterious and interconnected than our daytime minds often recognize. From ancient questions about identity to the playful strangeness of infinity and possibility, each paradox has whispered a small reminder. Reality is richer, softer, and more intricate than the tidy explanations we like to cling to. But perhaps the most important lesson isn't tied to any single paradox at all. It's the understanding that we don't need to resolve every contradiction tonight. Some questions are meant to be held gently rather than solved, like small lanterns that illuminate the path without revealing its end. And maybe that itself is the quietest paradox of all, that in accepting what we cannot fully understand, we make room for something deeper, a sense of wonder, humility, and openness that carries its own kind of wisdom.